I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Mohammed Say on the line, and he is CEO and founder over at 1099 Workers and Managed Health. Mo, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so we got a lot to talk about today, so I definitely want to get into the work that you're doing over at 1099 Workers and Managed Health. But before we do that, I see the term here, founder. I'm founding multiple companies, multiple things. I'm just curious, how did you get into the entrepreneur space? Like, where did that start for you?
Oh, man. I think I always had it. I always wanted more.
We would have been on the playground. What would you have been selling?
Yeah.
I was selling comic books and baseball cards. What were you selling?
Oh, my God. I don't know that I was selling anything, but I think it started when I immigrated to the U.S. I'm originally from Senegal. It's in West Africa. And I feel like going all the way across the globe to a new country, not speaking a language, right? I mean, I feel like once you're able to do that, you can essentially do anything, right? So I was just hungry. I just wanted more. I wanted to live the American dream. And so I knew it took a lot of hard work and also betting on yourself. And yeah, I think it's just naturally just got there.
So fast forwarding a little bit here, where did you originally, or how did you originally find this space and decide, like, as entrepreneurs, lots of different things we could do, but for you to kind of tackle this 1099 issue or even the managed health side of things, like, where did you see the opportunity?
Yeah, so I was in sales for the majority of my career, and around 2008, 2009, I wanted to do something more than just selling. I wanted to do something that was meaningful, but I also wanted to make a good living. Yeah, so I happened to do some work in the insurance space and realized that was a space that, number one, made the most millionaires in America based on studies, but also I could do something that was meaningful. So, and providing access to care, to healthcare, something that's, really impactful. And I come from a continent where that's not readily available. So it was a combination of, just being curious, always being curious and asking questions and wanting to learn more, and got exposed to that space and just grabbed it and just ran with it and wanted to, just make a difference.
Wow, that's amazing. What do you like about working in that space? Like, even if you think about the in the beginning, like, what did you enjoy about this?
So it's a very, healthcare and insurance.
It's tough, very by the way. I'll say why. Like, it's tough. It's not an easy space. That's why I'm curious. Go ahead.
It is such a hard space, right?
Yeah.
So, but for me, again, coming from maybe the place that I came from, just not having access, right? So I'm more obviously on the healthcare side, right? So providing and 1099 in both managed health, we tend to focus on what I call the underinsured and the uninsured space, right? So today, studies have shown that 50% of Americans who have access to health insurance say no to it. Right. These are full-time employees that qualify to get it through a large employer, right? Fortune 500 company, mid-sized companies, you name it. But there's a much larger.
Did that surprise you initially?
Oh, yeah.
We're learning about this. You're like, what do you mean? Like, we would love to have this opportunity, and you're saying no? Like,
it was very surprising, right? But then you dig a little bit deeper, right? So then, it's expensive, right? So it's a the employee who has to contribute hundreds of dollars per paycheck, right? With high deductible, high co-insurance. I mean, our government was shut down for a few months last year, right? I mean, it's such a space that really needs a lot of help, right, for both the consumer and the employer end. So managed health was essentially designed to solve both on the employer and the employee side. 1099, right, the largest, fastest growing segment of the workforce, right? Most of us wanting to work for ourselves now, right? So the gig economy, it's growing. They're more self-employed than ever. Large companies are laying off, right? Most of these jobs are going away forever. So you will have more entrepreneurs, I believe, in the coming years than we've ever had before. And there's a large gap, right? And we want to essentially solve that gap and fill it.
So let's go a step further and maybe get just a little bit more granular. So tell me about both of the companies and exactly what you do, please.
Yeah, very good. So with Managed Health, we essentially provide employee benefit solutions. We tend to focus more on health, wellness, preventative measures, right? So if you think about most Americans, we provide access to physical exams, colonoscopy, prostate exams, right, mammograms, and so on. We provide wellness solutions for the employees so they feel better, right, access to care, and we make most of these benefits available at $0, right? So no out-of-pocket pocket, so it makes it affordable, accessible for the employer and the employee population. On 1099, since today, 35% of the U.S. workforce receives a 1099 at the end of the year, which makes up roughly 75 million Americans, and this number is expected to grow to 50% of the workforce by 2030. So that's roughly 90 million people over the coming 45 years will be self-employed or 1099 as far as a workforce, right? So that's an extremely large number, right? And the infrastructure has not grown to support that population, right? So if you remember, possibly you may remember this, there's a world where our parents had to work for large organizations, right? GM, GE, Ford.
I'm from Michigan originally. I don't know if you knew that, but
I did it, right?
I'm Detroit specifically, so you're speaking my language. Go ahead.
Exactly, but that's changing, right? So now you have,
past tense,
changed, exactly, and accelerating, right, due to AI. So so then what, right? So when you work for GM, Ford, right, you had a pension, you had healthcare, you had a retirement, right? You had all of these whole infrastructure that existed to support these employees, but now you lose that, right? So, and obviously with AI, this is accelerating even more. So 1099 was essentially designed to support that new workforce, right? So from benefits, from retirement, from 401ks, right, from access to setting up your business, right, the entire ecosystem and whole infrastructure to essentially address this new gap that's in the space, which is, 76 million Americans today.
So when you think about this 1099 space, and this is always, I'm so curious about it, how should these, I don't want to use the word gig worker because there's so many different workers, but these let me just be literal. So how do these 1099 individuals, how should they be thinking about themselves? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question, because sometimes like what you just now mentioned about once upon a time we had pensions, we had this, we had all these other things. And so that's kind of been the quote unquote American dream style of what's been sold for so long that I don't think people understand really how to reframe this new paradigm. So I'm curious from your end, how should these 1099 individuals be thinking about themselves and their future as it regards to these benefits and everything else you're talking about?
Yeah, and that's a great question, right? And I think that's the big question that should be answered, right? So number one, they should be taking themselves as a business, right?
I love it.
Just beyond, right?
Please, love it.
Right. So we, oftentimes we think of ourselves as just the one individual, right? A gig worker or what have you. But
that's why I didn't want to use that word because I'm like, no, it's more. Go ahead, please.
That's exactly why we didn't use that word, right? So it doesn't mean necessarily that I'm a gig worker, right? So for example, today, 30% of our population are attorneys. Right? Most attorneys are self-employed individuals, right? So are they 1099, right? I mean, in the U.S., if we just take a step back, right? I mean, at the end of the year, from the eyes of the IRS, really, they look at us either you're a W-2, right, which is what you receive, and if you work for a company, or two, you work for yourself and you're receiving, if you make any money, 1099, form, right? So we called it 1099 just because we knew, right? I mean, you have nurses now, right? Most nurses, or at least a good percentage of nurses, are now 1099, right? Doctors are becoming 1099. Dentists are 1099, right? So you also have your trade workers, right? So obviously you have your plumbers, and that's the side of the economy that we said is not being replaced by AI anytime soon, right? Who knows, still to be debated. But these are trade professionals, right, that also need access to care, right? That they also need access to retirement, right? I mean, just think about it for a second. You have an entire population of young kids, right, who most likely will never have a W-2 job, right? They could have a podcast like yours and be extremely successful, right, and will never have a W-2 job, meaning there's a chance that they may not save for retirement. There's a chance that they may not have access to adequate health care, right? There's a chance that they may not have the support or the infrastructure that employees have if you work for, a Coca-Cola or Facebook or Google of some sort, right? So I think we need to just reimagine, and we all should be thinking about ourselves as a business, right? And then, get the infrastructure underneath it to help us succeed in that business.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I think that shift in just mindset is important for people to think about, especially because many people that are 1099 maybe don't really think of themselves as entrepreneurs, like that thought process around it. And I feel like that affects many things, like their finances, the benefits they choose, like using services like yours or not, and just kind of like letting it go and not, you know what I mean, not paying attention. Right. But these things can be real, or not can be, they are a real risk if they're not addressed, they're not handled properly, and they don't, unfortunately, because maybe a person that was 1099 and was in that space, they may not have thought of themselves as an employee. They're not maybe educating themselves in the same manner. And I don't want to generalize, but many, right?
Right, exactly. And, I think there's some data that supports that, right? I believe 60% of entrepreneur 1099, right, get into tax trouble in the first, couple of years, right? I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, I focus on building my companies the first year or two, reinvested every dime back in the business, right? Maybe the last person you're thinking about is Uncle Sam, right? But again, am I structured in the right way? I like to have access to capital, right? It's a very lonely space. Right. So at the end of the day, right, you have your thoughts to yourself. You really want to build something meaningful, right? And you just don't have the support. So we're introducing a community, right, where we can play more of a role of a supporting role, right, for other people who look like us, who are in the same space, right? Whether you are a influencer, right, whether you are an attorney, whether you're a doctor, right, or in the trade, right, real estate agent. I mean, I can go on and on. Financial advisors. Most of these people have a business. Again, at some point we call them self-employed, right? That's still that. You're an entrepreneur, right? You're a gig worker, right? You're a full-time Uber driver. It goes on and on and on. And again, that world is just getting much bigger. I mean, you can see with all the layoffs that we've had this year, even from big tech, right? I think approaching, 300,000 or 400,000 just this year, right? And these numbers will continue to grow. And I believe a large percentage of these individuals will not be going back to a 9-to-5 corporate job in the way that we understand it, right? But you will have more entrepreneur immersing, right? But they're used to a certain level of benefit or at least infrastructure, and we want to recreate that, make that available to this population.
Amazing. Mo, final question here. What are your plans to scale this and to continue adding value in the future? Like we're all entrepreneurs listening to this. I should say many are. Like, tell me about the vision going forward.
Yeah, so the vision, again, it's beyond, we started with the benefits, right? Because we figured that's the one decision most Americans make every single year, right? So typically, if you work for a company, open enrollment is coming, you will be making healthcare decisions. If you're self-employed, open enrollment is coming, right? You will be making healthcare decisions, whether it's on the ACA or, your state-based exchange or what have you, right? So we are now expanding, and we want to hear from the population, what do we care about, right? As a 1099, again, we come in all different shapes and sizes and different backgrounds and industries and so on. We want to create an environment where we all feel like we belong inside of this platform called 1099 Workers, right? So the platform is evolving. We're asking our members, our population, what is it that you care about, right? And can we deliver that and create a value system that we all bringing everything that we have in common, which is essentially betting on ourselves, right? And helping our business scale and grow. We want to create that environment inside of 1099. So we have this goal of onboarding 100,000 members over the next 12 months. That will take a lot of work, right? That means creating enough value that 100,000 people would want to be part of the same thing. And I believe we can grow this thing even much larger from there. But that's our immediate vision, and that's the direction in which we're moving.
Wonderful. Mo, if somebody wants to follow up and they want to learn more about 1099 Workers or Managed Health, how do they do that? How do they connect?
1099workers.com. You can follow us on any of your social, our LinkedIn, our webpage, or managedhealth.com. Managedhealth.com.
Perfect. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so that you can click on the links, head right on over and connect. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. You heard me correct. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So hit that subscribe or follow button. And Mo, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show.
It was all mine. Adam, and your podcast is incredible. Learning so much from it. You're changing lives, having a great impact. Keep doing everything that you're doing. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.